Hello and a massively warm welcome to Churchcentral South for this our online carol service, Light in the Darkness. My name is Rich and I'm going to be hosting us through all that we've got lined up this evening. Whether you're kicking back on your sofa with a glass of wine or a hot chocolate or whatever your Sunday evening vibes are this close to Christmas in your house, whether you're feeling festive and really excited about the coming days, or whether, if you're honest, you're a little bit more fatigued and fraught and frantic at the end of this crazy year. Whoever you are, wherever you are, and however you are, it's so great that you're with us. And I'm confident that tonight is going to bring joy to each and every one of us. Light in the darkness is our theme. And the inspiration for it comes from some ancient words that are often read at Christmas. They were written by a man called Isaiah 400 years before the first Christmas, when he was daring to dream what it might be like if God was to ever come to this broken, needy world. And he said it would be a little bit like this: a people walking in darkness have seen a great light. A friend of Jesus called John spoke similarly when he said, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." See, Christmas, like life, I guess, is about darkness and light. And so we want to create space for two main things in our time together this evening. Firstly, we're going to be hearing some stories from across the church of people who have known darkness and light in 2020. And hopefully as we hear these stories, it'll help us to remember, to reflect, to acknowledge, and perhaps even to begin to process some of the darkness that we've seen in our world, in our nation, in our city, and even in our own lives this year. But as we do that, hopefully you'll catch that simmering away like a pan of mulled wine on the hob is going to be this bubbling, bursting sense of joy, of life, of light, of hope, as we unashamedly celebrate the good news of Christmas, the good news that even in this crazy year, there is a God who cares for us, who cares for you, who loves us, who loves you, and who shines in the darkness, even in a year like this one. And to help us do that, we've got some amazingly fun, creative, joy-filled music created by our Churchcentral South worship team and some of their friends from across the city that is going to get even the most Scroogey among us tapping at least 1 foot, I'm pretty confident. To top it all off, as our finale at the end of this evening, we're going to be having the debut performance of our first ever Churchcentral virtual choir, which I'll tip you off, I've seen it. It's worth sticking around for. So we've got that to look forward to as well. So for now, why don't you sit back? Why don't you reflect on the year that has been? Why don't you allow yourself to be moved and inspired by the stories of light in the darkness? And why don't you celebrate the good news that there is a God of love and that his light shines even this year? I'm here with Sarah, a nurse in our city and a dear part of our church. Sarah, tell us, what have you been up to?
I've worked as a specialist nurse in my current job for the past 19 years. And whilst I do see some patients on the wards in the main hospital, the majority of my work is usually with outpatients in clinic. So when I got a call from my manager back in March to say that I was going to be redeployed to ITU the following week, I was rather apprehensive, to say the least. That weekend, instead of being at home with the family after working all week, I joined a number of staff in the Medical Education Centre for a crash course in looking after ITU patients. The main message being to try not to pull out any of the tubes and lines which were delivering life-saving treatment to the very sick patients. And then we were plunged into the thick of it. I arrived for my first shift having hardly slept and having had very little to eat or drink, as, like everyone else in the staff room, we were terrified of needing to go to the toilet once we were inside the unit wearing all our PPE, as we knew it was in short supply and we didn't want to waste it. Once inside the unit, I was faced with some of the sickest patients I had ever seen. I felt completely out of my depth and was also aware of how worried my family was for my safety, as stories emerge daily in the news of healthcare workers losing their lives to this terrible illness.
And in all of that, Sarah, how has Jesus made a difference to you?
So each day on the way to work, I ask God to protect me and help me to be useful and not to do anything to endanger life. I've definitely known God's protection and presence with me, and I'm also very thankful to the many people who've been praying for us as a family during this time of fear and uncertainty. I was eventually released back to my pain management job in August. However, numbers started to escalate again in September, and I was asked to go back to ITU at the beginning of October. So here I am again, but this time feeling a lot more prepared and capable. However, I am still dependent on God for his protection and guidance as I seek to care with compassion and love for the very sick patients and their families who are often distraught because they cannot visit and are very aware that their relative may not make it. So while it has been a very challenging year, it has also given me an amazing opportunity to once again experience the faithfulness of God and the fulfillment of a promise that has sustained me many times over the years, that in all things he works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose.
Let every heart prepare.
I'm here with Shalini. Shalini, why don't you tell us what you've been up to in your work context this year and what difference Jesus has made in all of that?
Hi, so I'm Shalini. I work as an anaesthetic trainee in the West Midlands. So for the most part of the pandemic, I've been working on intensive care. So from roughly about March to now, we sort of knew something was coming, and we didn't know how bad it was. There was not much information really to go on. So I did what everyone else did, which was to immerse myself in BBC News and every scientific article there was. And then you were constantly plagued by how infectious it was, and you constantly heard news about how some colleague of yours got it, or somebody you knew is now on a ventilator in an intensive care unit. So it was quite scary to go into work every day. The most tangible presence of God feeling was driving back from work one day, and I it had been a whole day of being with people that were nervous, scared, and I was nervous, I was scared, and I put my Spotify on, and the song that came on was I'm Surrounded. So it's the words say, this is how I fight my battles. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. That sort of is what I held on for the rest of the pandemic, really, knowing that it was God that was giving me protection. It was the fact that God orders my days, and He has numbered my days, and He knows what I'm going through.
Yaz, tell us your story from this year.
Yeah, so as many of you know, I completed my A-levels this summer. Completed feels like the wrong word because obviously I was doing them, and then COVID hit, we all went into quarantine, and then sort of never left before at least the school term ended. And so to begin with, I thought we were going to go back to school. We were going to have was it 3 weeks? Of let's all pretend that this is really serious, and then go back to school, do exams. Maybe exams would be pushed back by a few weeks to give us a bit of extra time, but I didn't really see it as an issue. And then sort of 6 weeks down the line, still no progress, and then gets to the point where I should have been taking my first exam, and I was sat on the swings with Eden, my daughter, and I was just yeah, that's happened. Sort of after the exams, there was a lot of disappointment because I spent probably the 3 hardest years of my life trying to do A-levels. So I went back to school when my daughter was 6 weeks old, and I was so committed, and I really, really tried, and I spent many hours crying over it, and then many hours making up for that, So it was a real disappointment because it felt like a computer generating my grade wasn't really worth all of that time and effort.
So Yaz, what difference has Jesus made in all of that for you?
I think it made a huge difference because I'm part of a church and therefore part of a community group. So sort of as quarantine hit, the community groups then also sort of balanced it out by every Thursday evening, being able to catch up with everyone in the community group and having everyone sort of kind of be able to follow along as I find out information, and being able to tell them, and sort of having people up to date asking me how I'm doing makes a huge difference. But then also personally, as I was sitting on the swing with my daughter as I was supposed to be taking a quite serious maths exam, I didn't really have to worry about it because ultimately I knew that if I was going to get a certain grade, it doesn't actually affect the path of my life, because it's just so much bigger than that letter on the paper, and that actually Jesus has got me where I am today. He's given me so many people to help me with my daughter, so many resources to help me even do my A-levels in the first place, that worrying about whether or not I was going to be able to complete the exam or get the grade that I really thought I could get, it just is just minor in comparison. Obviously I still feel worry, and I still feel quite distressed sometimes because it just feels like a waste of 3 years. Actually, I know that Jesus has used all of that hard work and all of that worry and all of that stress, and He's taught me how to deal with it, and He's actually going to be able to use that for His good.
We know that 2020 wasn't only dominated by the coronavirus story, but that the whole issue of racial injustice came to our national consciousness in a way that it hasn't done for a long time. And I wanted to ask Misha here some of your reflections, Misha, your observations on that, and how Jesus was with you in the midst of this year.
Yeah, definitely. It was an interesting year in terms of all the strange effects of lockdown. I think other people have said, and I think my observation was that particularly around May, so there were like a number of deaths in America, racist killings basically of black people, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd was kind of the culmination of that. And then what you had was that conversation about racism and the nature of racism moving from just being American to across the world, and in particular, that conversation kind of landing in the UK and re-examining again kind of England's role in slavery, in colonialism, and how that means that the structures that we live in today are still racist. And so I think things that I've probably thought about and known for a long time had come to the national question and consciousness, as you say. And I think for me, that was both really interesting and exciting at times, but also quite heavy at times. Looking back at it, firstly, I was really blessed that the church engaged with that. I know at the start I didn't necessarily engage myself because I was still processing it, but it was just really encouraging to know that the church was praying about it, that the church was engaging with it as an issue, and that this is an issue of injustice that wasn't kind of absent from the church's purview. And for me, that was really encouraging and really helped me feel like that I could engage with this as a Christian in my church life as well. A lot of those negativities can sit with you and you can feel very frustrated as to why is it like this? Why is society so unfair? Why does God allow this to happen? Why has God allowed this to happen? Why is the legacy of slavery such a long one? Why are those structures still in place? And I guess particularly when it's not necessarily something you see wrestled with in a church context, then it can be something that you wrestle with on your own. But actually, I think it's been a really helpful reminder that Jesus is passionate about injustice, all forms of injustice, and racial injustice isn't something that he doesn't see. It's something that he cares about as well and is passionate about. And being able to have those conversations in a church context with my church family, to pray about those things, and to see like kind of active things happening in the church to address those things. I think all of that has just been really encouraging. So I guess that's how I guess this unusual year and the impact of that on those questions about racial injustice have impacted me, and how Jesus has really helped me with that.
Oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O come thou day spring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloom Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice,
I'm here with Luke and Hannah and Joshua, and it might be relatively obvious to see what's happened in this family in 2020. But guys, why don't you tell us what's been going on for you and how's Jesus made a difference to you?
Little Joshua.
Little Joshua!
Yeah, so we have little baby Joshua in the pandemic, which was a bit crazy because obviously having a baby is crazy anyway, but having one in a pandemic is like a whole other level of craziness. I think for me, I'm a bit of a control freak and I like to sort of have plans and know what's going to happen when, and I think when you have a baby, you already know that you're not going to be able to do that. But I think all of like the changing circumstances of the pandemic were a bit, there's like an extra thing on top of it, and I felt like God sort of taught me that like you can read scriptures where you're like, I know God has a plan, like I know that I can trust him. And I think sometimes you need to have like circumstances which allow you to sort of almost practice out those things in real life. And I think for me, like God sort of said to me, it's okay, you can trust me, you can hand these things over to me, and sort of just practice what you already know in your head. But I suppose it's just giving you a chance to live that out, really.
I'd started to, I suppose, feel anxiety like I'd not done before. I think having a baby, so everything before I think was, I suppose it was me and Hannah that you think about, and then baby with so many uncertainties, just kind of brought that a level of anxiety that I've not experienced before. Literally just before Hannah went into labour, went into lockdown, didn't we? So I was there for the birth, but then afterwards you were in hospital about 5-6 days, and obviously with no visitors. So all I was getting was phone calls from Hannah kind of giving me updates, and me just thinking, oh my word, how is Hannah coping on her own? And I think for me, I just, I relied on God so much, just being able to pray, being able to kind of know that maybe everything wasn't in just our hands, knowing that God's there, being able to pray, ask for help in terms of being a parent, has been hugely, I don't know how I could do it without knowing without knowing Jesus.
Well, I hope that you've been moved as I have this evening by the stories of Charlene, of Sarah, of Misha, of Yasmin, of family Jackson and their amazing floating baby. But you know, tonight, it doesn't have to just be about their story. It can also be about your story. I don't know what the story of your 2020 is, but I know this, it will have experienced some darkness. I know that because I've chatted to a few people this year, mostly on Zoom, not face to face. And I know that because as a Christian, the Bible actually prepares me on every page for a life that is full of many types of darkness. The Bible speaks of the darkness of sorrow, and we use that language, don't we, when we've had a dark day or a dark time. The Bible also speaks of a darkness closer to home, a darkness that is inside of us, perhaps in our dark thoughts or our dark actions. Perhaps you've noticed some of that this year in you as you've reacted and responded under pressure, perhaps even to those you love the most. Most of all, the Bible acknowledges a universal experience of darkness that all of us feel, a darkness of being separated from God. See, the logic is simple. If God is the God of light, if God is the God who is the source of all light, then to live without much reference to him, to live kind of disinterested or aloof from him, is to be separate from light. And if you're separate from light, then it is a very real type of darkness. But that's where the good news of Christmas comes in. Because the good news of Christmas is that the light, Jesus Christ, shines into all of those types of darkness. He is the antidote to sorrow. Not that he instantly fixes our lives, as our stories have shown, but that he injects into our lives this joy-bringing, spirit-lifting news that we're not on our own, that we never have to be on our own, that there is a God who loves each and every one of us. He's the light in our inner darkness as well. He shines into all of our mess and our good and our bad and all that's come out of us this year with the beautiful message of forgiveness, of grace, of mercy, of kindness. Jesus, when he grew up after the first Christmas, on the first Good Friday, died on a cross. And in that moment, he took from God all the punishment for our darkness, so that we can come to him and know simply forgiveness, simply grace, simply acceptance. And that's why he is able to be the antidote to the third type of darkness, the darkness of separation from God. Because he's paid for it all, now the way is open and the Christmas invitation goes out to you that you can come back again and be close, be reconciled, be near to the light. Christmas is light shining in the darkness. I want to ask you this question as we wrap up. Will you let Jesus be the light who shines in your darkness this year? And we're going to finish with our big finale, the wonderful Churchcentral Christmas choir, as they perform O Holy Night. And I want to ask you, as you watch them and perhaps spot some faces that you might know, why don't you reflect on that invitation from Jesus? Why don't you let him be the light who shines in your darkness this year? If you aren't kind of used to this sort of stuff and you're a bit new to church, it's wonderful that you've been listening. If you want to just pray a simple prayer to reach out to Jesus tonight, why don't you ask him in your own words, Jesus, will you show me if you're real? Jesus, will you be the light that shines in my darkness? I don't really know what to say to you, Jesus, but if you're there, I'm interested and I'm in. Why don't you use this song to say that to him, and sit back and enjoy.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Saviour's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appears and the soul felt its worth. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did. I was sent the draft of that a couple of days ago, and I have been very excited for you all to see it. So a massive well done to Laura and to Joel, who pulled all of that together brilliantly, and to everyone who took part. Great job. I loved listening to it. All that remains for me to do is invite you to a couple of things. Firstly, straight after we're finished here, you can jump on to what's normally called our coffee time after our morning service. If you're drinking coffee now, then may the light shine in your darkness, my friends. But whatever you've got in your hand or no drink at all, you can jump on to catch up with others, as we would if we were in a carol service normally, say Christmas greetings to one another and catch up with a few faces. Then you can jump onto our website, churchcentral.org.uk/south, and join there when we are finished here. On Christmas Day and on the 27th, we're going to have services to continue celebrating the light of Christmas. All the details, again, are on the website. If you get confused, just head there. I think we're done. I think, though, it would be good to get at least 1 or 2 feet tapping again. So to play us out, we're going to have Hark the Herald Angels Sing, What a Bop This Is, by our amazing team. So a very Merry Christmas and enjoy listening to this. See you soon.